Ben, 23 graduated from college last year, and like many young adults, I moved back home to save money. My parents, Kathy, 50F, and Robert, 50M, agreed to let me stay, charging me $400 a month in rent, a figure they insisted was below market value, but still a decent chunk of my entry-level salary. My goal was simple: save aggressively for a down payment on my own modest place, to finally gain some independence. I worked hard, often picking up extra shifts, living frugally, pouring every spare dollar into my savings account. Despite paying rent, contributing to groceries, and generally being a quiet, responsible tenant, I always felt like a second-class citizen in my own home. My parents have always had a golden child, and that child was, and still is, my younger sister, Megan, 20F. Megan never had to work for anything. She got a brand new car for her 16th, while I drove a beat-up hand-me-down until I could afford my own at 20. Her college tuition was fully covered, mine was partial, forcing me into loans and part-time jobs. Her needs, her desires, her whims, they always took precedence. It was just the accepted family dynamic. I learned early on to just keep my head down, work hard, and rely only on myself. A few months ago, Megan's life took an unexpected turn. Her long-term boyfriend, Leo, abandoned her when he found out she was pregnant. She was devastated, understandably. And immediately, my parents swooped in. Megan moved back home, into her old room. My parents transformed into her personal support system, driving her to appointments, cooking her every meal, constantly doting on her, telling her she was so strong and such a brave mommy. They canceled their own plans to cater to her needs, and money, which they always claimed was tight for my needs, suddenly appeared freely for Megan. I tried to be sympathetic. Pregnancy is hard, and being abandoned is brutal. I offered to help Megan move her stuff, offered to listen. But the disparity in treatment became painfully, glaringly clear. While I was still paying rent, working my butt off to save, and generally living as a responsible adult, Megan was being treated like a fragile queen, deserving of every indulgence, every convenience, simply because she was pregnant. My existence, my contributions, my plans, seemed to evaporate into the background. The situation escalated quickly as Megan's pregnancy progressed. Her due date was approaching, and suddenly, her small childhood bedroom wasn't adequate for a nursery. It was too cramped, not enough sunlight, not suitable for a growing baby. My parents decided, without any discussion, that Megan needed a larger room. And guess whose room was the largest, brightest, and most conveniently located near the bathroom? Mine. One Tuesday morning, my mom, Kathy, walked into my room while I was getting ready for work. "Ben," she announced, her voice cheerful, as if delivering wonderful news, "we've decided to convert your room into the nursery. Megan needs the space for the baby. It's the best room for it." I froze, razor in hand. "What? My room? Mom, I live here. I pay rent. You can't just take my room." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be dramatic, dear. It's for the baby. Megan needs this. We're moving you down to the basement." The basement. Our basement was unfinished. Damp, concrete floors, exposed pipes, and absolutely no windows. It was basically a glorified storage space. And they were expecting me to live there. The basement? I scoffed, my voice incredulous. "Mom, there are no windows down there. It's a dungeon. And I've been paying rent here for a year. You can't just kick me out of my room for a nursery." My dad, Robert, walked in, his face stern. "Ben, this isn't a discussion. It's a family decision. Megan needs this, and it's time you put family first. We need to do what's best for the baby. You have 3 days to move all your things downstairs." 3 days. To vacate the room I paid for, the only private space I had, and move into a windowless pit, all for the convenience of my sister and a baby who wasn't even born yet. I was being treated as less than a tenant, less than a son, barely even a person whose comfort mattered. All my contributions, all my efforts to be a responsible adult, were utterly dismissed. It was an insult. A profound, humiliating insult. I knew, in that moment, that this was their ultimate message: I was expendable. My needs, my privacy, my very presence, meant nothing compared to Megan, the golden child, and her impending baby. The resentment that had simmered for years finally boiled over into a cold, hard resolve. I started packing that night, numbly throwing my clothes and books into boxes. As I reached into my closet to grab an old Nike shoebox I kept hidden on the top shelf, my secret stash, my life savings, my hand met empty air. My heart pounded. I pulled down the box. It was empty. The carefully folded bills, the $10,000 I had painstakingly saved over the past year and a half, every single penny I had worked for, was gone. Panic flared, quickly replaced by a sickening dread. There were only 3 people who knew I kept money there, my parents and Megan. No one else had access to my room. I stormed out, the empty shoebox clutched in my hand, and found my parents in the living room, watching TV, looking utterly nonchalant. "My money," I said, my voice trembling with controlled fury. "My $10,000. It's gone. Did one of you take it?" My mom, Kathy, looked up, a slight frown on her face. "Oh, that. Yes, dear. We borrowed it." "Borrowed it?" I exploded. "You borrowed my life savings without asking? Without telling me?" My dad, Robert, sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Ben, don't be dramatic. It's for family needs. Megan needs a lot of things for the nursery, the crib, the stroller, all those baby clothes. It's expensive. We needed it." "You took my savings to buy baby supplies for Megan?" I yelled, my voice cracking. "That was for my own apartment. My future. You had no right. That's my money." "It's family money now, Ben," Kathy said, her tone annoyingly calm. "It's going to a good cause. It's for your niece/nephew. You're part of this family. You should be happy to contribute." "Happy to contribute?" I was shaking with rage. "You stole from me. You want me to give up my room, move into a windowless pit, and then you steal my hard-earned money to buy stuff for the golden child? You disgust me." I walked away from them, tears of pure betrayal streaming down my face. I had always been the invisible child, the overlooked one. But this? This was a new low. This was open contempt. They didn't just disrespect me, they saw me as a resource to be exploited, my privacy meaningless, my savings theirs for the taking. As I sat in the darkened living room, away from them, the despair threatened to swallow me whole. But then, a thought sparked. A few months ago, I had noticed some strange occurrences in my room, things moved, items slightly out of place. Nothing major, but enough to make me feel uneasy. Out of a vague sense of paranoia, I had installed 2 tiny, almost invisible cameras, one disguised as a USB charger near my bed, and another cleverly hidden in a bookshelf. They were cheap, off-brand, but they worked. I had forgotten about them, thinking I was just being paranoid. Now, a cold, vengeful determination set in. I needed to check those cameras. I carefully retrieved the cameras, avoiding my parents. I connected them to my laptop. My heart hammered as the files loaded. I skipped through hours of mundane footage until I found what I was looking for. There it was. My mom, Kathy, entering my room. Going straight to the closet. Pulling down the Nike shoebox. Her hands rummaging inside. Her expression was casual, almost bored, as she pulled out the stacks of bills. Then, her and my dad, Robert, sitting at the kitchen table later that evening. I enhanced the audio. "See," my mom was saying, fanning the cash. "Plenty for the crib now. And some extra for those cute onesies Megan wanted." "Good," my dad grunted. "Ben won't even notice until he moves. And even if he does, it's for the baby. He'll get over it. It's family." They laughed, a dismissive, casual sound that made my stomach churn. They weren't just stealing, they were laughing about it, completely confident in their impunity. The evidence was undeniable. Clear. Audio and video confirmation of their theft, and their callous disregard for my rights, my savings, my very existence. The despair I felt earlier transformed into a steely resolve. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was a crime. And I was going to make them pay. Armed with the video evidence, I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, before my parents were even awake, I drove straight to the police station. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was firm. I walked up to the counter and said, "I need to report a theft. By my parents." The officer looked skeptical at first, probably assuming it was a petty family squabble. But as I calmly explained the situation, the forced move, and then, crucially, played the video footage for him, his expression changed. His eyes widened. He called over another officer. "Son," the second officer said, his voice grave, "what your parents did here. That's not just a disagreement. That's grand larceny. That's a felony." My breath hitched. Felony. The word hung in the air. I nodded. "I understand. And I want to press charges." They explained the consequences: arrest, potential jail time, a criminal record. It was a heavy weight. These were my parents. But they were also thieves. They had stolen from me, betrayed my trust, and treated me like trash for years. This wasn't about revenge, it was about finally standing up for myself, about reclaiming my autonomy, about getting justice. I looked the officer in the eye. "I want to press charges." The arrests happened 2 days later. The police advised me not to be at the house, to avoid any further confrontation. They came to my parents' house just as they were returning from a grocery run. I watched from a distance, parked down the street, my heart pounding in my chest. The flashing blue and red lights. The police cruisers pulling up. My parents' bewildered faces as the officers approached them. The handcuffs. The stunned looks of neighbors. Megan, walking out, looking utterly confused and horrified, shouting, "Mom! Dad! What's happening?" It was surreal. The emotional weight of it was immense. I felt a pang of sadness, a flicker of the child who once looked up to them. But mostly, it was relief. A profound, almost overwhelming sense of relief. It was over. The toxic dynamic, the years of favoritism, the casual exploitation, it was finally, brutally, being addressed. They were facing consequences for their actions, consequences they had always escaped. In the weeks following the arrests, the fallout was chaotic. My extended family was completely divided. Some relatives, primarily my grandparents and Paul, were incredibly supportive, confirming their own long-held suspicions about my parents' behavior. They praised my courage for standing up for myself. Others, however, were furious with me. "How could you do this to your own parents? Their family. You sent your mom and dad to jail." They accused me of being cruel, vindictive, of tearing the family apart. Megan, of course, was hysterical. She tried every manipulative tactic in the book. Tearful voicemails begging me to drop the charges, angry texts calling me a monster, even trying to get mutual friends to guilt-trip me. I ignored it all. My lawyers handled all communication. My parents were eventually released on bail, facing felony theft charges. The process would be long, but the charges were real. The pain of confronting my own parents, of seeing them arrested, is something that will stay with me. But the alternative, remaining silent, continuing to be their victim, watching my life savings disappear, and being relegated to a basement, was far worse. I chose myself. I chose my future. I'm now living with my grandparents, saving diligently for my own apartment, and enjoying a sense of freedom and autonomy I've never truly known. My relationship with my parents is non-existent beyond legal matters, and my relationship with Megan is strained beyond repair. But I found a newfound respect for myself, and I'm surrounded by people who truly value and respect me. This painful chapter has ultimately become the foundation for a stronger, more independent future. In the end, I found freedom and a sense of self-worth that had long been overshadowed by my family's toxic behavior. It was a hell of a fight, but it was a fight I won.